Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark.
The one thing that I love that she's bringing to her sport, more people want to watch. More people want to tune in. I saw for the first time that they had a chartered plane for the first time in their league history. You know, they flew private. That should be celebrated in its own right. From anyone that's, you know, in sports that's flown commercial or flown, you know, charter, that should be celebrated. And it's because of Caitlin Clark. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it fucked up. Caitlin Clark is the reason why a lot of great things is going to happen for the WNBA.
Caitlin Clark's story is the kind of transformative sports narrative that rarely comes around. From a young age, she displayed the type of basketball brilliance that many athletes spend their entire careers trying to cultivate. But it wasn't just her exceptional talent that made her stand out. It was her undeniable ability to inspire hope in a league that, for years, had been on the verge of collapse. Caitlin Clark became the name on everyone's lips in the world of women's basketball, and for good reason. Her skills on the court made her one of the most electrifying players in recent memory. Her leadership, deep shooting range, and competitive spirit elevated not only her team but the entire WNBA. In a way, Clark wasn't just a star. She was a phenomenon that carried the weight of an entire league. Her departure from the WNBA now casts a shadow of doubt over its future, as the league struggles to recover from the financial and cultural void she left behind. For a league that had historically struggled to gain recognition and financial sustainability, the arrival of Caitlin Clark was like hitting the lottery. She brought new eyes to the game, boosted ticket sales, and drove television ratings through the roof. In a matter of months, the WNBA seemed poised for a golden age. Yet all of that momentum came crashing down when Clark made the decision to leave. The question now lingers: can the WNBA survive without her, or is the league doomed to fade back into irrelevance? To understand the monumental impact Caitlin Clark had on the WNBA, we need to take a closer look at where the league stood before her arrival. The WNBA's journey has been far from smooth since its inception. When the league was first launched in 1996, it had the full backing of the NBA, which provided the initial financial and marketing support necessary to get it off the ground. The league's early years were filled with promise, with big-name stars like Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, and Cynthia Cooper captivating audiences. However, the initial excitement around the WNBA soon faded, as viewership declined and the league struggled to maintain a stable fan base. By the mid-2000s, the WNBA was consistently operating at a loss, with teams unable to fill arenas or draw significant sponsorship deals. The league's reliance on NBA subsidies became more pronounced, and despite the talent on display, it seemed the WNBA was destined to remain a second-tier sports league, forever overshadowed by men's basketball. One of the major hurdles the WNBA faced was media coverage. In a sports market dominated by the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL, women's basketball received minimal attention from mainstream sports networks. The lack of coverage only exacerbated the league's financial struggles, as fewer viewers meant fewer opportunities for sponsorships and partnerships. The WNBA's media deal with ESPN, for example, was far less lucrative than the NBA's TV rights, further contributing to the financial imbalance between the two leagues. Even during the 2010s, when players like Maya Moore, Brittany Griner, and Breanna Stewart helped elevate the game with their incredible performances, the WNBA still couldn't break through to the mainstream sports audience. Attendance figures hovered around an average of 7,000 per game, an improvement from previous years, but still far below what was needed to make the league financially viable. Merchandise sales were dismal, and despite the occasional burst of media attention during the WNBA finals, the league struggled to maintain consistent relevance. The underfunding of the league also manifested in the form of logistical challenges. While NBA players traveled on private jets and stayed in luxury hotels, many WNBA teams had to fly commercial, sometimes experiencing delays that would cause players to arrive just hours before game time. These differences in treatment and funding created a stark contrast between the two leagues, further emphasizing the inequality between men's and women's professional basketball. The financial struggles of the league weren't just felt at the organizational level, they also affected the players. The salary cap for WNBA teams has been notoriously low, with the average player making around $75,000 a year, compared to the millions earned by even bench players in the NBA. This forced many WNBA stars to play overseas during the offseason to supplement their income, often risking injury and burnout in the process. Players like Diana Taurasi famously skipped entire WNBA seasons because they were earning more money playing in Russia or Turkey. Caitlin Clark's arrival, a new era for the WNBA. Everything began to change when Caitlin Clark entered the scene. Coming out of college basketball, where she was already a sensation, Clark was expected to make waves in the professional ranks. But what she achieved in her short time in the WNBA far exceeded even the wildest expectations. She was more than just a player, she was a movement. Her on-court prowess was undeniable, but what set Clark apart was her ability to attract a following. The feverish excitement surrounding her debut season was unlike anything the WNBA had ever seen. Fans flocked to see her play, both in Indiana and in opposing teams' arenas, eager to witness her deep three-point shots and game-winning plays. Clark's arrival marked the beginning of a cultural shift within the WNBA. Fans who had previously been indifferent to women's basketball began tuning in to watch her games, and media coverage of the WNBA expanded in ways that hadn't been seen in years. Suddenly, it wasn't uncommon to see highlights from WNBA games featured on major sports networks and social media platforms. Clark's performances regularly went viral, and her name became synonymous with the rise of women's basketball. The impact on ticket sales was staggering. The Indiana Fever, a team that had historically struggled to fill their arena, became the hottest ticket in town. For the first time in the franchise's history, they sold out games on a regular basis. In fact, other WNBA teams experienced a similar surge in attendance when Clark and the Fever came to town. Clark had become a traveling spectacle, drawing fans from all corners of the country to see her play. Her influence wasn't limited to just fans attending games. Merchandise sales skyrocketed, particularly those featuring Clark's name and likeness. Jerseys bearing her number sold out in record time, and online stores struggled to keep up with the demand. For a league that had long struggled to generate significant revenue through merchandise, Clark's popularity was a game changer. Corporate sponsors quickly jumped on the Caitlin Clark bandwagon. Major brands like Nike, Adidas, and Gatorade signed deals with her, eager to associate themselves with the new face of women's basketball. This influx of sponsorship money benefited not just Clark, but the WNBA as a whole. New partnerships were formed, and existing sponsors increased their investments, leading to a financial boom for the league. For the first time in years, the WNBA was on solid financial ground, and it had Caitlin Clark to thank for it. The media impact, bringing the WNBA to prime time. Clark's arrival didn't just boost ticket sales and merchandise revenue, it also had a profound impact on the WNBA's media presence. In the world of professional sports, television ratings are everything. Networks like ESPN and ABC had long carried WNBA games, but the viewership numbers were often lackluster. The average WNBA game struggled to attract more than a few 100,000 viewers, and the league's marquee events like the All-Star Game or the Finals barely registered in the broader sports landscape. All of that changed with Caitlin Clark's debut. Her games consistently drew in larger audiences, with some matchups garnering over 1 million viewers, an unheard-of figure for regular season WNBA games. Networks began to realize that Clark was more than just a great basketball player. She was a ratings magnet. As a result, WNBA games featuring Clark and the Indiana Fever were moved to primetime slots on major networks, giving the league unprecedented exposure. This media attention didn't just boost viewership for individual games, it raised the profile of the entire league. Sports talk shows, which had previously given little attention to the WNBA, began to cover Clark's highlights and discuss her impact on the league.
And shoot the blood out of the ball. You know what I mean? And then just how aggressive she is, and not just scoring in basketball, getting her teammates involved as well. I think she's so great for the game. You know what I mean? It was a pleasure watching her, and I just think down the road, she's going to only get better.
Social media platforms exploded with clips of her deep three-pointers and game-winning shots, helping to spread the WNBA's reach to a younger, more tech-savvy audience. The increased media coverage also led to more advertising revenue for the league. With more eyeballs on WNBA broadcasts, advertisers were willing to pay higher rates for commercial spots during games. This provided a much-needed financial boost to the league, helping to offset some of the losses it had incurred in previous years. In many ways, Caitlin Clark had single-handedly elevated the WNBA from a niche product to a mainstream entertainment option. The fallout of Caitlin Clark's departure, a financial crisis for the WNBA. However, all of that progress came crashing down when Caitlin Clark announced her departure from the WNBA. The league, which had been riding high on the wave of her success, suddenly found itself in freefall. The impact of her departure was immediate and devastating, both on and off the court. The most noticeable effect was on attendance. Indiana Fever games, which had previously been sold-out events, saw a dramatic drop in ticket sales. Fans who had flocked to see Clark play were no longer interested in attending games, and the once-packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse became eerily quiet. Other WNBA teams experienced similar declines in attendance when the Fever came to town, as Clark's absence left a gaping hole in the league's star power. Television ratings also took a nosedive. Games that had once drawn over 1 million viewers now struggled to attract even half that number. Networks that had been eager to broadcast WNBA games during Clark's time in the league began to cut back on their coverage, relegating games to less prominent time slots. Without Clark to draw in viewers, the WNBA's television deal lost much of its value, and the league was once again facing financial uncertainty. The financial fallout extended beyond just ticket sales and TV ratings. Sponsors who had signed lucrative deals with the WNBA during Clark's tenure began to pull back. Without the league's brightest star, the WNBA no longer seemed like a viable investment for many corporate partners. As a result, the league lost millions of dollars in sponsorship revenue, further exacerbating its financial woes. The merchandise boom that had accompanied Clark's arrival also dried up. Stores that had struggled to keep her jerseys in stock were now left with unsold inventory, as fans no longer had a reason to buy WNBA merchandise. The league, which had enjoyed a brief period of financial stability during Clark's time in the WNBA, was now facing the very real possibility of bankruptcy, player salaries, and the exodus to overseas leagues. One of the most immediate consequences of the WNBA's financial collapse has been the impact on player salaries. During Caitlin Clark's time in the league, top players had finally started to see their paychecks grow, thanks to the increased revenue generated by her presence. However, with Clark gone and the league's financial situation deteriorating, many players have seen their salaries slashed. The average WNBA salary, which had risen slightly during Clark's tenure, has now dropped back to pre-Clark levels. Top players who had been counting on the league's newfound financial stability to support their careers are now facing pay cuts that make it difficult to justify staying in the WNBA. This has led to a growing number of players seeking better-paying opportunities overseas. European and Asian leagues, particularly in countries like Spain, Russia, China, and Turkey, have long been a refuge for WNBA players looking to supplement their incomes. These leagues offer significantly higher salaries than the WNBA, with some players earning more in one overseas season than they do in multiple WNBA seasons combined. With the WNBA's financial struggles showing no signs of abating, more and more players are considering leaving the league entirely and taking their talents abroad. The exodus of top talent to overseas leagues is creating a vicious cycle for the WNBA. As more players leave, the league loses its star power, which in turn leads to further declines in attendance, viewership, and revenue. Without its top players, the WNBA becomes less attractive to fans, sponsors, and broadcasters, making it even harder for the league to generate the revenue it needs to stay afloat. The future of the WNBA. Can the league survive without Caitlin Clark? The WNBA now finds itself at a critical juncture. Without Caitlin Clark, the league's future is uncertain. Can the WNBA survive without its brightest star, or is the league destined to fade back into obscurity? Some experts believe that the league still has a chance to rebound, but it will require significant changes to its business model and marketing strategies. First and foremost, the WNBA needs to find new stars to fill the void left by Clark's departure. While there is no shortage of talent in the league, no player currently has the same cultural resonance that Clark did. The WNBA must do a better job of marketing its players and creating compelling narratives that draw in fans. One potential strategy could be to highlight the rivalries between teams or individual players, similar to how the NBA has successfully marketed the Lakers-Celtics rivalry or LeBron James versus Stephen Curry. Additionally, the WNBA must address its financial instability. The league has long relied on subsidies from the NBA to stay afloat, but that model is no longer sustainable. the WNBA needs to find new revenue streams, whether through better TV deals, expanded sponsorships, or increased merchandise sales. One potential avenue for growth is international expansion. Women's basketball is growing in popularity around the world, and the WNBA could explore opportunities to play exhibition games overseas or partner with foreign leagues to increase its global footprint. Another area where the WNBA could improve is in its digital presence. While Caitlin Clark's highlights went viral on social media during her time in the league, the WNBA has been slow to fully embrace the digital age. By investing more in social media marketing, creating engaging online content, and partnering with influencers, the league could attract a younger, more tech-savvy audience. The NBA has successfully used digital platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok to grow its fan base, and the WNBA could benefit from a similar approach. Finally, the WNBA must address the issue of player salaries. If the league wants to retain its top talent, it needs to find a way to pay players a competitive wage. This could involve negotiating better TV deals, securing more lucrative sponsorships, or even exploring revenue-sharing agreements with the NBA. Without a significant increase in player salaries, the exodus of talent to overseas leagues will continue, further diminishing the WNBA's appeal to fans and sponsors alike. The next few years will be critical for the WNBA. Caitlin Clark's departure has left the league in a state of crisis, but with the right moves, the WNBA could still rebound. Whether or not it will survive without her remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the league cannot afford to stand still. The future of women's professional basketball hangs in the balance, and the WNBA must act quickly if it hopes to secure its place in the sports world.